Artistic expression is as old as society. From the very beginning of civilization, humans have found ways to unleash their creativity, from cave paintings to pottery and into paintings, music, and theater. Time has seen art evolve from the most basic drawings to full experiences that can move people to tears. The modern day has seen a fascinating shift towards the use of technology in art, from music writing programs, digital illustration tools, and even full interactive experiences created with coding and technology. Perhaps one of the most important of these mediums, however, is the use of video games as an art medium. At its core, video games are a combination of many different art forms. Visual art, storytelling, and music are just some of the many mediums that merge together to create a full gaming experience, with the added element of the control that a player has over their own experience in a game. The world is beginning to realize the potential of games as an art form, and how they can be used to create a unique artistic experience that can't be replicated in any other medium. When people think of art, one of the first things that come to mind are paintings. Works like Starry Night and the Mona Lisa immediately pop to the forefront of the mind. There's something magical about seeing the strokes of a paintbrush across paper, something that conveys something deeply human, and it's this visual effect that is captured so beautifully in the game Disco Elysium. Calling to mind the traditional paintbrush strokes so common in classical oil paintings, it takes this deeply human experience of creativity and almost twists it, creating a game that is both moving and disturbing, using unpleasant imagery such as symbols for the many skills acquired in the game, almost reminiscent of the grotesque works of Francis Bacon. Disco Elysium, unlike many other role-playing games, especially in the modern day, uses no combat or any real-life skill-based gameplay, instead relying on Dungeons & Dragons-style skill checks and dice rolls, following a pair of tired, depressed policemen on their hunt to solve a murder mystery in a poor, unfriendly neighborhood. There's heavy themes of alcohol abuse, drug addiction, and mental instability, which both contrast and are supported by the heavy oil brushstrokes of its art style. The game itself didn't even start out as a video game. The creator, Robert Kurvitz, created the game with his friends after an evening of drinking. The idea of making a video game wasn't even remotely on their minds. They simply wanted to open a creative outlet and make their voices heard. After the failure of his book and falling into alcoholism, Kurvitz eventually gathered a team of artists and developers to turn his ideas into a video game, despite the force of poverty working against them. What came out was this masterpiece in storytelling, reflecting the struggles of its creator against poverty and alcohol addiction, which is a common thread one can find in many artistic works. It's an expression of its creators that has resonated with millions of people worldwide, and has solidified itself in the modern day as an outlier and an example in what a video game can be. But video games are not all about visual concepts. If they were, then how different would they be from a painting or a movie? The thing that makes video games unique is the autonomy of the player and the control they have throughout the experience. One of the greatest examples of how gameplay can itself hold up an artistic experience is in the game What Remains of Edith Finch. The game itself is visually and musically beautiful, with a compelling emotional story following an exploration of the Finch family and the tragedies that befall each one. It takes you through a variety of mini experiences, through the deaths of each member of the family, each using different techniques of gameplay and visual storytelling. From an unfortunate death on a cliffside, through a series of photographs that the player is taking in real time, to a strange, possibly fake telling of a story through panels of a comic book that come to life. And perhaps most impressive and sad of all, the story of a man who slowly becomes consumed by his own fantasy world until he takes his own life to stay in it forever, told as a game within a game. It's a game that truly immerses the player in the eyes of this supposedly cursed family, presenting a variety of experiences that simply cannot be captured anywhere else. There is simply something so immersive about making the physical motion of turning a page while watching, on the screen, as your character turns said page of a book. It's little things like this that come together into a whole grand experience that makes Edith Finch so important and so memorable. Speaking of experiences in games, one thing that has become surprisingly relevant in modern games is the experience of the world underwater. The game Subnautica gave gamers a unique underwater experience, mixed with an ever-present sense of thalassophobia, and it has captured the eye of the video game world, selling millions of copies worldwide and achieving internet fame. However, another underwater game, Abzu, has another take on the experience of the world beneath the waves. Instead of finding a dark and hostile deep alien sea, the game simulates almost a dreamlike experience of floating through the ocean. Abzu's director, Matt Nava, had previously worked on games such as Journey and Flower, both artistic in their own right, and pulled inspiration from their stylized, minimalistic approach to exploration. He was inspired by a love of ancient Sumerian culture and scuba diving, while also pulling relations to climate change and the relationship humans have with the ocean. It gives an almost meditative journey, encouraging the player to stop and appreciate the lush ocean life all around them, and this whole other world that they've stepped into, while also appreciating the danger of the deep ocean. As he says on scuba diving, you're just struck with the beauty of this place, but at the same time, you have this respect for it, because you know that really, you're not in control. You're not really the one with power here, and that dichotomy between the fear of the ocean and the awe and majesty of it is something that speaks to us deeply. We really wanted to capture it in the game. And capture it he does, with sequences of both beauty and hopefulness, but also some that may leave players anxious for the dangers ahead of them. Abzu comes together as both an experience, with beautiful visuals, gameplay, and music, that takes the player to another world, and a message about climate change, the importance of the ocean, and appreciating the world around us. Appreciating the world around us as an artistic expression isn't a new one. Great painters and artists throughout history have captured the essence of a moment, in a painting or a piece of music or poetry. It's a subject as old as art itself, and one experimental artist, DeVere O'Reilly, took it one step further with his game, Everything, in which the player can experience, well, everything. It takes the perspective of a star, and a planet, and a fish, and a beetle, and a blade of grass, and an atom of oxygen. If it exists, you can become it. Paired with calming sounds and the occasional quote from philosopher Alan Watts, it's a strangely calming game that opens the eyes to the entire world and the connectedness of everything. As O'Reilly states, I want everything to make people feel better about being alive, not as an escape or distraction or arbitrary frustration, but something you would leave and see the world in a new light. It's an art piece itself, an interactive experience that, like Abzu, encourages the player to open their eyes to the world around them and leave with a new sense of appreciation for the world they live in. Something like Everything simply isn't possible in any other medium. Sure, a painter can make a series of paintings of different aspects of the world, but nothing could give the same sort of autonomy and control that video games do. A movie could tell a story, or a theater production, but the story of Edith Finch would not have been so impactful if it wasn't directly controlled by the player's input to its variety of unique mechanics. With emerging technology and developers pushing the bounds of what is possible in games, it's becoming more and more clear to artists around the world that video games might be the next big medium for art to advance, creating more diverse and impactful art statements and experiences than ever before.